Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? They practiced in the Dome today, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. They were indoors in the Dome getting ready for the game this weekend.
How did they sort of structure today's practice? Full practice, more of a walkthrough? How did they look?
Yeah, it was. I would call it a full practice because they went through like 7-on-7 drills as well as team drills, and the team drills got a little, I don't want to call it chippy, but mouthy, I guess. It's been a very vocal group these last couple of days, which is always a lot of fun to watch in practice. But, you know, they were in shells too, so there was a little bit of a lighter sort of feel to it. At the same time. But a lot of what they started with at the beginning of the day for most of the position groups, particularly skill position groups and the defensive backs groups, was a lot of ball tracking work. So having to sort of be able to find the ball in the lights of the Superdome, trying to focus on getting guys ready for that, for game action on Sunday. So that was the early focus. And then after that, they kind of worked their way through their usual sort of team drills. We saw 4 team drills today, which included some red zone work as well as some 2-minute drill in the game work.
It's always interesting, Ross, to know who sort of the role check, right? I mean, as we're going into the final preseason game. So what was notable today about who was there, maybe who wasn't?
Yeah, one of the most notable absences today was actually, you know, second-year wide receiver Chris Olave, who's been, you know, outstanding this entire camp, and everyone's that's seen him so far simply buying in on who he's going to be his second year. But it was a rest day for him, interestingly enough. So if you can imagine, you know, some type of a statement being there to say, hey, how important this guy is to the club that he got a rest day in just his second season, pretty remarkable. So that was one of the big takeaways there. The other one was just kind of watching the quarterbacks get their work in because, you know, we were trying to kind of deduce over the course of time how many starters we would see. A lot of us didn't believe we'd see many starters on Sunday. And so when we watch, you know, guys like, you know, Jameis Winston take a lot of those second-team snaps as he usually does, but then when they did the 2-minute end-of-game drill or work at the end of the day, we saw Derek Carr do the first set and then actually Jake Haener do the second set as opposed to Jameis Winston doing the second set, which I think seems to deduce or allows me to deduce, and it seems to indicate that Jameis Winston will start this game on Sunday, but Jake Haener will play the second half just like they did last week, as they were kind of getting him ready for a potential end-of-game situation where they're looking for him to maybe drive down the field.
Hey, what's been your opinion of Jameis so far in this training camp?
It's been a little bit of an up-and-down camp for Jameis. I would say a lot more up than down, but the down moments are definitely there. Look, he's turned the ball over. He's done those things. Decision making is still something that has been a little bit loose on his side. But that's not to say that interceptions aren't happening elsewhere. We've seen Derek Carr throw interceptions. We've seen Jake Haener throw interceptions as well. I know that there's a lot of sort of discussion around the idea that, hey, if Jake Haener, performs extremely well over the course of this offseason, would it lead the New Orleans Saints to trading away Jameis Winston? And that was one idea that I was usually pretty kind of hesitant around because it didn't seem to make sense to me. And the biggest reason why is because you look at Jameis as a guy that has NFL experience, that has won in the NFL, that has also won in your system. And that could be really valuable as a backup quarterback to be the guy on the sideline there. That brings in, more kind of insight in terms of what he saw on the defensive side when working with Derek Carr while the defense is on the field and things like that. So I think that those are the things that you're looking for from Jameis is his ability to be able to kind of help translate the game a bit for Derek Carr, who's in a new-ish system, a system that's still familiar to what he's done, but still new. And so I think that's the real value of Jameis Winston. But there has not been any question at all in terms of, who the guy is in the building. The guy has very much been Derek Carr, and the performances for both those quarterbacks tend to reflect that.
Ross Jackson is with us, Locked On Saints podcast. Rashid Shaheed's back. Anything notable there?
Yeah, they didn't have him participate in any of the team drills, so that seems to indicate that he won't, even though he's back in practice now, that he won't be a part of Sunday's game against the Texans. But what we did see, though, is him get involved in punt return drills again. So one of the big question marks going into the season was maybe as Rashid Shaheed's offensive role ticks up, that maybe his special teams or returner role ticks down a little bit. And it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. We've seen a lot of guys returning kicks and punts in his place while he's been out. Quan Baker's been back there, Ugo Amadi, Jontre Kirkland's been back there, Alontae Taylor's gotten some opportunities there. But it looks like that's still going to be in Rashid Shaheed's sort of wheelhouse of being that returner, that primary returner for the team. So that's an interesting bit to just kind of keep an eye out on as a guy that's going to see his offensive opportunities tick up, but he's still going to be very heavily involved as a returner as well, it looks like.
Russ, what on Sunday do you think is at stake? Maybe another way to say it is, for some guys, obviously, we know they're not going to make the team, right? They're just putting out film.
Mm-hmm.
But for people or guys who do have something significant at stake, who do you think maybe is at the top of those lists? Most to gain, most to lose type thing.
Yeah, I think, guys that are like right on the cusp of the roster are the ones that you're really going to want to key in on during Sunday's game. Guys like Ty Summers in the linebacker room, for instance. He's a guy that came in last year about midway through the season, really kind of made, kind of carved out a role for himself as a core special teamer. And now they've got him kind of learning all three linebacker positions. He's usually a middle of the field Mike linebacker type, but they've kind of got him working on both the strong and weak sides as well. And so, look, he has an opportunity here to show that he can contribute from multiple spots in the defense while also still being that core special teamer. I think that ends up going a long way for him. And that linebacker room has gotten just more and more populated over the course of this offseason with the addition of, a Jalen Smith who comes in and immediately carves out a role for himself. So I look at Ty Summers there. I look at the undrafted free agent wide receiver out of South Carolina State University, Shaq Davis, who just continues to make plays. He did it again today, too, Matt. I mean, he just keeps making plays. For whatever reason, or not for whatever reason, but at some point, some switch flipped in Shaq Davis, and Shaq Davis went, oh, okay, I can do this. And so it's been great to watch. But, if he's making the roster right now, is he making the roster as a sixth receiver, and will the Saints keep that many? And so those are the big kind of things you have to convince the organization of if you're that player, is that I got to convince you to keep a six wide receiver, which means maybe keeping one less running back or one less defensive back or one less linebacker. Like, you're not just competing against the other wide receivers. You're competing against anybody and everybody who could contribute on special teams as well. And so I think that those two guys in particular, as well as a couple of others that are up there, like a Jack Heflin in the defensive line, an Nephi Sewell at the linebacker spot. But there's a few of those players out there that are going to have a real opportunity here on Sunday to carve out a spot for themselves, whether it be on the 53-man roster or on the practice squad.
Have you been paying attention to any of the rest of the division? I'm just curious if you have a take on where the Saints reside right now in the division as opposed to the rest of the division and how their training camps have gone. It's perfectly fine if not. I'm just curious if you've even taken like a peripheral view.
Yeah, no, for sure. We have. And, over here at Locked On, we're getting ready for our big NFL previews and everything like that. So we actually, all four of us on the NFL South that cover each of the four NFC South teams, did a show together to kind of do exactly that. So what I would say is that, in Tampa, the quarterback competition that probably wasn't actually a quarterback competition between Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask, obviously, publicly has been settled. It's Baker Mayfield, but there still seems to be some concern about how effective the team could actually be. One of the big things that's really interesting about the Buccaneers is that they dealt with a lot of injuries on the offensive line, yet Tom Brady last year was only under pressure about 20% of his dropbacks, one of the lowest in the NFL, if not the lowest in the NFL, in terms of like qualifying, quarterbacks that took enough dropbacks throughout the season. And so what's going to be really interesting is if that offensive line can protect Baker Mayfield the way that it protected Tom Brady, does that happen to elevate Baker Mayfield's game in some way to make the Tampa Bay Buccaneers better than they are expected to be? I doubt it, but it's something to watch out for. And then when you look at both Atlanta and Carolina, both of them have a lot of pieces that are in place, and they feel really confident about each of those teams going into 2023. The biggest question mark right now in Carolina, outside of the defense, is can the offensive line protect Bryce Young? And we've seen over the course of preseason and training camp that being the big struggle is the protection for the young quarterback. And with how effective the New Orleans Saints defensive line has been so far this offseason, that's a really nice matchup for them, especially early in the season. They'll see them, week two this year. So, week 3, thank you, this year. So lots of opportunity there for that New Orleans Saints defensive line. If it starts to cook as early as it can over the course of the regular season, as we've seen it over the course of training camp, that could cause a lot of trouble for the rookie quarterback there.
Just to make sure I have it, I think it's week 2, right? They open up with Tennessee and then they go to Carolina, week 2? Yeah, 2. So
it is week 2. It is week 2.
It's Tennessee at Carolina at Green Bay, and then home against Tampa. It's, I think they got a real shot, Ross, to get off to a a really good start against that schedule. I mean, I don't know how you feel, man. Going on the road to Carolina, that's never easy. But if you're going to face Bryce Young, I know it's his first home game, but I'd rather face him in his second start than his 12th start. So I think they got a great shot to get off to a good start. We'll see if they can do it. One more preseason opportunity. Make sure you're subscribed up to the Locked On Saints podcast. He's on Twitter at Ross Jackson Nola. Y'all give him a follow. You're the best, man. We appreciate you as always. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Right back at you. Take care, stay safe, and talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.